The Grand Galactic Council chamber was a sight that never failed to impress visitors. It hung in the void of space, orbiting a neutron star whose pale blue light filtered through crystalline walls that stretched hundreds of meters high. Inside, representatives from 847 different species gathered in their assigned sections, their forms ranging from the humanoid to the utterly alien. Today the chamber buzzed with an unusual energy. Word had spread quickly through the diplomatic channels that something entertaining was about to happen. The viewing galleries were packed with junior diplomats and staff members, all eager to witness what promised to be either a spectacular disaster or an unexpected comedy show. At the center of the chamber, Ambassador Krelnox of the Vaxian Collective stood at the prosecution podium. His 6 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he looked down at the lone figure standing at the defense platform far below. The Vaxian's scaled hide rippled with colors that his species used to express emotion. Right now, those colors showed smug confidence mixed with barely contained amusement. The figure at the defense podium was human. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her expression calm and neutral. She wore the simple dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and bioluminescent displays worn by most other representatives. She looked small and insignificant in the vast chamber, and she knew it. The council speaker, an ancient being whose species had been part of the galactic community for over 10,000 years, brought the session to order. The sound of its communication device echoed through translation systems in hundreds of languages. Ambassador Krelnox has submitted a formal proposal, the speaker announced. He requests that humanity be banned from all council-controlled space and stripped of their provisional membership status. The floor is yours, Ambassador. Krelnox activated his display screen with a dramatic gesture. It showed a list that scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. The charges were numerous and varied. 23 violations of established safety protocols, Krelnox began, his voice booming through the chamber. Unauthorized weapons development in 14 different categories. Reckless endangerment of peaceful shipping lanes. 17 counts of ignoring quarantine procedures. And perhaps most seriously, what I can only describe as crimes against common sense. Laughter rippled through the assembly. It started with a few delegates and quickly spread. Soon, hundreds of different sounds that served as laughter in hundreds of different species filled the air. Some were high-pitched chirps, others were deep rumbles that made the floor vibrate, and still others were patterns of light that pulsed with what could only be described as mirth. Ambassador Chen did not react. She simply waited. Humanity, Krelnox continued, clearly enjoying himself, has been part of this council for exactly 50 of their Earth years. In that time, they have managed to cause more incidents, more complaints, and more general chaos than species that have been members for millennia. He pulled up a holographic image. It showed a human cargo ship that looked like it had been put together from spare parts and optimism. This vessel, he said with obvious disdain, violated safety regulations simply by existing. When inspectors tried to board it, the human crew refused entry, claiming they were in neutral space and thus not subject to council jurisdiction. When reminded that they were in fact in council space, they claimed the regulations were unreasonable. More laughter. The human ship on the display did look ridiculous compared to the sleek, safe vessels used by other species. Krelnox showed another image, this one of a human mining operation. When this mining team was told that their equipment did not meet safety standards, do you know what they did? They modified it themselves, in the field, with no engineering oversight. They turned mining equipment into something completely different without permission or proper testing. He shook his head, his scales rippling with colors that expressed disbelief. The humans, he continued, have no respect for rules that have kept galactic civilization safe and orderly for thousands of years. They improvise. They take risks. They do things simply because no one told them they could not do those things. They are dangerous not because they are powerful, but because they are unpredictable. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from many delegates. Several species who had filed complaints against human activities were nodding their equivalents of heads. They have one star system, a delegate from the Quilarian Consortium called out. One planet. No colonies. Their entire fleet could be counted on my tentacles. Why are we even having this debate? More laughter, though this time it had an edge of agreement to it. Krelnox spread his arms wide in a gesture of conclusion. Humanity is too reckless to be trusted with membership in this council. They endanger themselves and others with their refusal to follow established procedures. I propose we revoke their provisional status and ban them from council space until such time as they can demonstrate that they understand how civilized species conduct themselves. The motion received immediate support from multiple delegates. It looked like the vote would be a formality. Many representatives were already preparing to leave, treating this as nothing more than an interesting diversion in their day. The speaker turned to Ambassador Chen. "Ambassador Chen," it said, not unkindly, "you have the right to present a defense before we vote. Do you wish to do so?" For the first time since the session began, Sarah Chen moved. She stepped forward to the edge of her platform and looked up at the assembled delegates. Her face was still calm, but there was something in her eyes now. "Something hard, I do," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, but the translation systems carried it clearly to every corner of the vast chamber. "Ambassador Krellnox has presented his evidence. He has made his case. I will not dispute his facts. Everything he said about human behavior is accurate. This caused some confusion. Several delegates exchanged what passed for puzzled looks among their species. However," Chen continued, "I would like to present some evidence of my own. With the council's permission, I would like to show you some footage." The speaker made a gesture of approval. Why not? This was already entertaining. Let the human have her moment before the inevitable vote. Chen turned to her aide, a young man who had been standing quietly beside her platform. "Show them," she said simply. The lights in the chamber began to dim. The laughter died away as delegates settled in to watch whatever the human wanted to show them. Most expected more examples of human foolishness. Some thought she might try to show human achievements, which would be modest at best given their short time in the galactic community. No one expected what came next. The main display screen, which dominated one entire wall of the chamber, flickered to life. The first image that appeared was a star map. Several delegates recognized it immediately. It showed the edge of council space, the frontier territories where civilization gave way to the unknown. A date stamp appeared in the corner of the screen. 3 months ago. The laughter had stopped completely now. The chamber was silent as delegates watched and waited to see what the human ambassador wanted them to see. The footage began to play. The star map zoomed in on a specific sector, and then further still until it showed a single point in space. A timestamp appeared. 73 days ago. The date made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. That was the day the automated warning systems had detected something terrible. Something that should not have been there. The screen changed to show sensor readings. Even delegates who were not military experts could read the basic information. Multiple objects, large, moving in formation, heading toward council space. Then the computer matched the sensor profiles against historical records, and 2 words appeared on the screen in multiple languages. Devourers confirmed. The reaction in the chamber was immediate. Delegates who had been relaxed and amused moments before now sat frozen. Some made sounds of fear. Others activated their own communication devices as if needing to verify that what they were seeing was real. The Devourers. Every species in the council knew that name. It was taught in history classes and military academies across 1,000 worlds. 10,000 years ago, they had nearly ended galactic civilization. It had taken 300 species working together to barely stop them. The war had lasted for generations and cost billions of lives, and then the Devourers had vanished. They had retreated into deep space beyond the reach of council sensors. For 10,000 years they had been gone. Many younger species thought they were extinct. Others hoped they were just a story used to scare children. They were not extinct. They were not a story. Ambassador Chen let the footage play. It showed the automated response from the Council Defense Network. Warning messages went out to all member species. Emergency sessions were scheduled. Fleet commanders were notified. Everything happened according to protocol. The footage then split into multiple screens, each showing the response from different species. The Vaxians began moving their fleet into defensive positions around their homeworlds. The Quilarians started evacuating their frontier colonies. The Centauri pulled back their exploration vessels. Species after species made the same choice: retreat, defend, wait for the Council to organize a proper response. It was the logical choice, The safe choice. The choice that followed all established protocols. Then one screen showed something different. It was a transmission from Earth, a human transmission. The timestamp showed it came just 3 hours after the first warning. 23 ships appeared on the tactical display. They were accelerating. Not toward safety, not toward Earth. They were heading directly toward the Devourer fleet. Someone in the council chamber made a sound of disbelief. "What are they doing?" a delegate whispered. The translation systems picked it up and spread it through the chamber. Ambassador Chen spoke without turning around, her eyes still on the screen. "Humanity was not invited to the emergency council session," she said quietly. "We were not warned directly. We were still provisional members after all. Not important enough to include in the immediate response planning." She paused. "But we have access to the automated defense network. We saw the same warnings you did. We saw the same sensor readings. And we intercepted the historical data about the devourers from the council archives." The footage continued. It showed a communication from the council military command to the human fleet. The message was short and direct. "Stand down. Return to Earth. This is not a human concern. Wait for proper military coordination." The human response came back within minutes. It was even shorter. "Negative." Continuing on course, the council sent another message. This one included calculations. It showed the size of the Devourer fleet compared to the human ships. It showed historical data about Devourer weapons and tactics. It showed survival probability calculations. The survival probability for the human fleet was 0.03%. The human response was the same. Continuing on course. "Ambassador." Krelnox found his voice. It came out as a croak. "This is insanity," he said. "This proves everything I said. They are reckless. They are suicidal. They have no concept of proper risk assessment." Chen turned to look at him. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard as stone. "We knew exactly what we were facing, Ambassador," she said. "We read your historical records. We studied the battles from 10,000 years ago. We knew the capabilities of the Devourer ships. We knew their tactics. We knew their weapons. We did the math." She turned back to the screen. "We knew we would lose." Silence filled the chamber. The kind of silence that comes when everyone is trying to understand something that makes no sense. The footage changed again. Now it showed the human fleet from a different angle. Recorded by long-range sensors, the 23 ships were spread out in a loose formation. They were not pretty vessels. They had been built for function, not appearance. Some of them showed signs of hasty modifications. Extra weapons bolted onto hulls that were never designed to carry them. Armor plating welded over critical systems. Engines pushed beyond their safe operating limits. An audio file began to play. It was a transmission between the human ships. The voices spoke in English, but the translation systems rendered it in every language in the chamber. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Defiant. All ships sound off." One by one, 23 captains reported in. Their voices were steady. There was no panic, no fear, just calm determination. "Command wants us to turn back," Rodriguez said. "They say the odds are too bad. They say we should wait for proper fleet coordination. Anyone want to vote on that?" Silence on the line. Then one captain spoke up. "Sir, if we turn back, how long until the council fleet is ready?" "Best estimate is 2 weeks," Rodriguez replied. "And the devourers will reach inhabited systems in 10 days, another long pause. Then a different voice spoke. Female, young, calm. "Then I guess we know where we need to be." One by one, the other captains agreed, some with words, some with simple clicks of affirmation on their communication channels. Not one voice disagreed. Not one ship turned back. Ambassador Chen let the recording play out. "Let the council hear every word. Someone has to slow them down," Captain Rodriguez said at last. "Someone has to buy time for those colonies to evacuate, for the fleet to mobilize. If it has to be us, then it has to be us." A pause. Then he added something that made several delegates in the chamber flinch. "Besides," Rodriguez said, and there was dark humor in his voice now, "no one ever accused humanity of being smart about odds. All ships prep for combat. Let us show these ancient bastards what 23 angry humans can do." The screen went dark for a moment. When it came back, it showed a tactical display. The human fleet was approaching the edge of a stellar system. Waiting for them, arranged in a perfect attack formation, were 234 Devourer vessels. The timestamp showed what happened next took place over the course of 6 hours. Ambassador. Chen spoke one more time before the battle footage began. What you're about to see is why Ambassador Krelnox is right to fear us, she said softly. But it is also why you need us. The battle footage that played across the massive display screen was unlike anything most of the delegates had ever seen. Military historians and commanders in the audience watched with growing horror and fascination. This was not how civilized species fought wars. The Devourer fleet moved first. They came in fast, their weapons already charging. Their tactics were based on 10,000 years of warfare experience. They knew how other species fought. They knew the standard responses. They knew how to counter every defensive formation in the Council military database. The humans did not use standard defensive formations. Instead, the 23 ships split apart in ways that violated every tactical doctrine. Some accelerated directly toward the enemy. Others performed maneuvers that pushed their ships to the breaking point, spinning and diving in patterns that should have torn them apart. The first Devourer ship opened fire. Its weapons were designed to disable enemy vessels so they could be boarded and their crews consumed. Efficient, effective, terrifying. The human ship it targeted did not try to dodge. Instead, it accelerated directly into the weapons fire. Its shields collapsed almost immediately. Its hull began to tear apart, and then it kept coming. Audio from the human ship played over the footage. The captain's voice was calm despite the alarm screaming in the background. All crew to escape pods. Engineering, give me everything the reactor has got. I am going to teach these things about kinetic energy. The delegates watched in stunned silence as the human ship, trailing atmosphere and debris, slammed into the Devourer vessel at a speed that turned both ships into expanding clouds of superheated gas and metal. The Devourers had never encountered an enemy that would deliberately destroy their own ship as an attack. It was not logical. It was not efficient. It was not something any sane commander would order. Humans, it turned out, cared very little about efficiency when they were angry. The battle continued. Another human ship took critical damage to its weapons systems. Instead of retreating, the captain ordered the crew to overload the reactor and manually detonate it in the middle of a cluster of enemy vessels. 7 Devourer ships were caught in the blast. A third human ship, completely out of ammunition and with its engines failing, used the last of its maneuvering thrusters to position itself in front of a Devourer battleship. Then it vented its entire atmosphere supply directly into the enemy sensor array, blinding it long enough for 2 other human ships to flank and destroy it. The humans were improvising. They were using their own ships as weapons in ways no one had ever considered. They were turning every system, every resource, every piece of equipment into something that could hurt the enemy. One ship, its weapons destroyed and its hull breached, managed to get close enough to a Devourer vessel to attach to it with magnetic grapples. Then the human crew manually set their fusion reactor to overload and evacuated in the last working escape pod. The resulting explosion took out the Devourer ship and damaged 3 others nearby. Ambassador Chen provided quiet commentary as the footage played. That was the Resilient, she said. Captain Martinez. She was 42 years old. Had 2 children back on Earth. Her last transmission was to tell them she loved them. No one in the chamber spoke. They just watched. The tactical display showed the numbers changing. 23 human ships became 20, then 18, then 15, but the Devourer count was dropping too, and it was dropping faster. 234 became 200, then 180, then 150. The Devourers began to change their tactics. They started trying to keep distance from the human ships. They stopped trying to disable and moved to destroy from range. But the humans adapted too. They used the debris from destroyed ships as cover. They predicted firing patterns. They worked together in ways that seemed to border on telepathy, coordinating attacks with minimal communication. One captain, whose ship was the last of his squadron alive, managed to trick a group of Devourer ships into pursuing him into the gravity well of a nearby gas giant. He led them on a spiraling path through the upper atmosphere, using the dense gases to disrupt their sensors. When they finally caught up to him, he had positioned himself so that their own weapons fire would hit each other. 6 Devourer ships destroyed each other trying to kill him. His ship finally succumbed to the atmospheric pressure, but not before he managed to ram one last enemy vessel on his way down. Chen spoke again, her voice steady despite the tears that ran down her face. "That was Captain James Park," she said. "He was 28. He had been married for 6 months. The footage showed the final phase of the battle. Only 3 human ships remained functional. The Devourer fleet was down to 46 vessels. Both sides were battered. Both sides were running low on ammunition and power. The Devourers should have won easily. They still had superior numbers. They still had better weapons. They still had ships that were designed for war, but they were facing an enemy that refused to acknowledge the concept of acceptable losses. An enemy that treated their own ships as expendable ammunition. An enemy that had read the historical records and understood something the Devourers had forgotten. Fear was a weapon too. The last 3 human ships formed up in a tight formation. They were barely holding together. Their hulls were scarred and breached. Their shields were long gone. Their weapons were running on emergency power, and they charged, not toward escape, not toward safety, directly at the remaining Devourer ships. One final transmission came from the lead ship. It was Captain Rodriguez again. His voice was tired but steady. "To any Council forces receiving this, the Devourer fleet has been significantly damaged. They are retreating. Repeat, the enemy is retreating. We have held the line." A pause. "Then tell Earth we bought them time. Tell them we held. Tell them." The transmission cut to static. The tactical display showed the final moments. The 3 human ships and the last cluster of Devourer vessels met in a final exchange of fire. When the sensors cleared, there was nothing left but debris. The final count appeared on screen. Human ships, 0. Devourer ships destroyed or damaged beyond combat capability. 189 Devourer ships retreated. 45. The chamber was absolutely silent. Not a single delegate moved. The massive display screen faded to black, leaving only one final piece of information. Human casualties, 4,371. Ambassador Chen turned to face the council. Her face was composed, but her eyes held something fierce and terrible. "Those numbers," she said quietly, "represent every deep space-capable ship Earth had, every crew member who volunteered for the mission. They knew the odds. They went anyway." The silence in the council chamber stretched on. Hundreds of delegates sat frozen, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The footage had ended, but the images remained burned into their minds. 23 ships against more than 200. No hope of victory, no possibility of survival. And yet they had fought anyway. Ambassador Krelnox was the first to find his voice. It came out weak and shaken. They died, he said, as if the fact needed to be stated. All of them died. Ambassador Chen turned to look at him. Her expression was not angry. It was something worse. It was the look of someone explaining something to a child who should already understand. "Yes," she said simply. "They died. But before they died, they destroyed or damaged 189 Devourer vessels. They forced the remaining fleet to retreat. They bought enough time for 6 colony worlds to complete their evacuations. They bought enough time for the Council fleet to mobilize." She paused, letting her words sink in. They held the line. A Quilarian delegate spoke up, its tentacles trembling. "But the cost, the sacrifice, by our calculations there was only a 0.03% chance of survival. No rational commander would accept those odds." Chen smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "That is exactly the point, Ambassador. You would not have accepted those odds. None of you would have. You would have done what was logical, what was safe, what had the best statistical outcome. You would have retreated and waited for better circumstances." She gestured to the now dark screen. "My people looked at the same numbers. We saw the same odds. And then we asked ourselves a different question. Not what was the smart choice, not what was the safe choice, but what was the necessary choice." She walked closer to the center of the chamber, looking up at the hundreds of delegates watching her. "Ambassador Krelnox is correct. We are reckless. We improvise. We take risks that no sane species would take. We have no respect for odds or statistics when we believe something needs to be done." Her voice grew harder. "But that footage is 3 months old. Do you want to know what has happened on Earth since then?" She activated a new display. This one showed real-time data feeds from the Sol system, from Earth. The numbers that appeared made several delegates gasp. "In the past 3 months," Chen said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, "Earth has gone to total war production. Every factory, every shipyard, every resource we have access to has been redirected to one purpose. The display showed ship construction numbers that seemed impossible. We had 23 deep space-capable ships when the devourers returned. Today we have 512, and more are being completed every day. A delegate from the Centauri Alliance stood up. "That is impossible," it said flatly. "Ship construction of that scale requires years of planning, decades of infrastructure development. You cannot simply build warships like you are making toys." Chen turned to look at the Centauri delegate. "You are correct," she said. "By your standards, it is impossible. By your methods, it would take decades. But we do not follow your methods. We took every toy, every tool, every piece of civilian technology we had, and we weaponized it." The display changed again, showing technical specifications that made military experts in the audience lean forward with interest and horror. "Your species uses plasma containment technology for power generation," Chen said. "We turned it into weapons. Your species uses gravity manipulation for comfortable transport. We turned it into ship propulsion systems. Your species uses quantum communication for faster-than-light messaging. We turned it into targeting systems." She smiled that cold, hard smile again. "You shared your peaceful technology with us because we were weak, because we were harmless, because we were not a threat. You gave us the tools of civilization, and we turned every single one of them into weapons." Ambassador Krell had recovered some of his composure. His scales rippled with colors that showed anger now, mixed with fear. "This is exactly why you should be banned," he said. "You are proving my point. You are dangerous. You cannot be trusted." Chen turned to face him directly. "Dangerous to whom, Ambassador?" "The devourers came back. Not in 1,000 years, not in 100 years. 3 months ago. And when they did, who stepped forward first? Who died to buy you time? Who is building a fleet right now to make sure they cannot come back?" She pointed at the display showing the current positions of human military vessels. "Right now, as we speak, humanity has positioned its fleet at the edge of Council space, not pointed at your worlds, not threatening your people. We are watching the dark. We are standing on the line between civilization and chaos, because someone has to, because no one else will." The council chamber erupted in noise. Delegates were shouting in hundreds of languages. Some were arguing for the human proposal. Others were demanding Earth be restricted immediately. Still others were trying to understand what they had just learned. The speaker called for order. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet down. When silence finally returned, Chen spoke once more. Her voice was quiet now, but it carried to every corner of the vast space. "You can ban us if you want. You can restrict us to our own system. You can cut us off from the council. But understand this. We will still be out there. We will still be watching the dark. We will still be standing between you and the things that want to destroy you." She paused. "Because that is what humans do. We do not run from impossible odds. We do not calculate acceptable losses. We do not wait for someone else to solve the problem. We see what needs to be done and we do it, even if it costs us everything." She looked up at Ambassador Krell one final time. "So yes, Ambassador, we are dangerous. We are reckless. We are everything you said we are. But we are also the ones who held the line when no one else would, and we are the ones who will do it again." The vote was called 3 hours later. In that time, the council chamber had been filled with heated debate unlike anything seen in recent memory. Species that had not spoken to each other in decades were now locked in fierce arguments. Military advisors were pulled from their duties to analyze the battle footage. Historical experts were consulted about the devourer threat. Through it all, Ambassador Chen stood quietly at her platform. She did not join the debates. She did not try to convince anyone. She had said what needed to be said, shown what needed to be shown. The rest was up to them. Ambassador Krell had withdrawn his original proposal, not because he had changed his mind about humans being dangerous, but because the debate had moved far beyond the simple question of whether humanity should be banned. The question now was what role humanity would play in the defense of council space. Some delegates argued that humans should be given no official role at all. They were too unpredictable, too willing to take risks, too different from established military doctrine. Better to keep them at arm's length and rely on traditional council defense. Forces. Others pointed out that traditional council defense forces had been preparing for 2 weeks while 6 colony worlds sat exposed to the devourer fleet. It was human ships that had responded immediately. Human crews that had bought time with their lives. The Quilarian delegate, whose people had been among those saved by the delay, spoke passionately about the debt owed to humanity. 3,000 Quilarian refugees had been evacuated from the endangered colonies. 3,000 lives that would have been lost if the devourers had not been forced to retreat. Finally, after hours of discussion, a new proposal was put forward. Not by Ambassador Krelnox, not by any of the major powers. It came from a small species called the Verdani, known for their careful deliberation and neutral stance on most issues. The Verdani representative stood and spoke in a quiet voice that somehow carried through the massive chamber. We have watched the footage. We have heard the arguments. And we have come to a simple conclusion. The humans are indeed dangerous. They are reckless. They do not follow our rules or our methods, but they are also willing to stand where others will not. They are willing to face threats that others flee from, and they have proven themselves capable of succeeding against impossible odds. The Verdani paused, letting its words register. Therefore, I propose that humanity be granted full membership in the Council, with one specific role and responsibility. Let them be our frontier guardians. Let them watch the dark edges of our space. Let them be the first line of defense against threats like the devourers. Let them do what they do best. Stand on the line and refuse to break. The proposal was met with immediate reactions, some positive, some negative. But as the debate continued, a pattern emerged. Species who had direct experience with threats to their borders supported the proposal. Those who had lost people in past conflicts supported it. Military commanders who understood what the human fleet had accomplished supported it. The opposition was mainly from species who had never faced a real threat, who had lived in the safety of the Council interior for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to stand on the edge of civilization and look into the dark. When the vote was finally called, the result was not unanimous. 53 delegates voted against. 112 abstained, saying they needed more time to consider, but 682 delegates voted in favor. The proposal passed. Humanity was granted full Council membership. They were assigned responsibility for the frontier territories. They were given access to Council military technology and intelligence. In return, they would serve as the first line of defense against external threats. The speaker made the announcement official. The crystalline walls of the chamber rang with the sound of delegates responding in hundreds of different ways. Some were sounds of approval. Others were sounds of concern. All were sounds of recognition that something had changed. Ambassador Chen stood at her platform and listened to the vote results. Her face showed no emotion, no triumph, no relief. She simply nodded once, a sharp acknowledgement that the task ahead had just become official. After the session ended, she returned to her quarters to send a message to Earth. The communication would take hours to reach home. Traveling through the relay network that connected the Council worlds, she composed it carefully, knowing that the words would be read by billions of people. The message was simple. The vote has passed. We have been granted full membership and assigned frontier defense. The Council understands what we did. They understand what we are willing to do. The sacrifice of the fleet was not in vain. We held the line, and now the galaxy knows we will always hold it. She paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then she added one more line. To the families of the 4,371 who gave their lives at the Void Gates. Your loved ones died heroes. They died protecting not just Earth, but 6 worlds and billions of lives they had never met. They died so that others could live. The galaxy will remember them, and we will make sure their sacrifice means something. She sent the message and then walked to her window. From here, she could see the neutron star that the Council chamber orbited. Its cold blue light reminded her of the stars back home. The stars that 23 ships had left behind, knowing they would never return. 3 months had passed since that battle. 3 months since Captain Rodriguez and his crew had made their last transmission. 3 months since humanity had proven that they could stand against the dark. But the war was not over. The devourers had retreated, but they were still out there. Still dangerous. Still a threat to every living thing in the galaxy. And now it was humanity's job to make sure they never got close enough to threaten civilization again. Chen pulled up a tactical display on her personal console. It showed the current positions of the human fleet. 512 ships now, spread across the frontier territories, each one crewed by volunteers, each one ready to do what needed to be done. She looked at the deployment patterns and felt a surge of pride. These ships were not just defenders. They were a promise that when the next threat came, when the next impossible situation arose, humanity would be there, standing on the line, refusing to break, buying time with blood if that was what it took. In the weeks that followed, human ships began to arrive at their assigned positions. They worked alongside Council defense forces, learning from species with thousands of years of military experience. But they also taught improvisation, taught adaptability, taught the kind of thinking that turned every resource into a potential weapon and every impossible situation into a challenge to overcome. Some Council species remained uncomfortable with their new neighbors. The humans were loud. They were casual. They made jokes about things that should not be joked about. They treated their massive warships like they were piloting civilian transports. But when the next crisis came, when pirates attacked a remote outpost, it was a human patrol that responded first. They arrived faster than should have been possible. Their ships pushed past safe operating limits. They disabled the pirate vessels without destroying them, using tactics that seemed to involve more luck than planning, but somehow worked perfectly. And when the outpost commander asked how they had arrived so quickly, the human captain just shrugged and said something that would become famous throughout Council space. "We heard you needed help, so we came. That is what we do." 6 months after the vote, Ambassador Krellnox requested a private meeting with Ambassador Chen. They met in a neutral location, an observation deck that looked out over the stars. Krellnox stood silently for a long time. His scales showing colors that Chen had learned meant deep thought mixed with reluctant acceptance. "I still think your species is dangerous," he said at last. "I still think you are reckless and unpredictable." Chen nodded. She had never argued otherwise. "But," Krellnox continued, his voice softer now, "I am beginning to understand that sometimes dangerous and reckless is exactly what is needed. My people lost 12 colony worlds to the devourers 10,000 years ago. We still remember. We still mourn. And when they came back, we froze, we waited. We calculated risks and odds while they moved closer." He turned to look at Chen. "Your people did not wait. Your people saw the threat and ran toward it, not away. That kind of courage is not rational. But perhaps courage is not meant to be rational." Chen smiled slightly. "Thank you, Ambassador. That means more than you know." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of sensors and civilized space, the devourers waited. And somewhere between the dark and the light, human ships patrolled, watching, waiting, ready. In her quarters that night, Ambassador Chen opened a private file on her console. It was a list of names, 4,371 names. Every crew member who had died at the Void Gates. She read through them slowly, as she did every night. Captain Rodriguez, Captain Martinez, Captain Park, on and on. Each name representing a person, a life, a choice to stand when logic said to run. At the bottom of the list, she had written a single sentence. A promise that she renewed every time she read the names. "We held the line, and we always will."